So our first term is Yamadori, and I brought one of mine in as an example. Yamadori is a word you'll hear a lot in bonsai, and what it means is a tree that's been collected from the wild, usually from a mountain or a forest environment. These trees often have amazing character, twisted trunks, and really interesting weathered bark, and that makes them really valuable as bonsai specimens. But the other thing you need to bear in mind with Yamadori is these trees are usually very, very, very old, and we're talking hundreds of years old. Now, this is a Sabino juniper. That was an import from Spain, collected there. And the way I'm handling this tree is very different from a young piece of nursery stock material that you might get from a garden centre. Those nursery stock trees are really young and vigorous, and you can do a lot with them without worrying about harming the tree. But with these older trees, you need to tread a lot more carefully, take a lot more care with them, and just look after them a bit. But if you do that, you'll be really rewarded with awesome bonsai in the end. Now, a fun term you might hear is yardadori. And what people mean by that is a tree they've dug up from their garden or their yard to turn into a bonsai. So next up is another really common Japanese term. And it's a really important one because it describes a part of the bonsai that can really make or break the design. So term number 2 is nabari. And what we mean when we're talking about the nabari are the surface level roots of the bonsai tree in contact with the soil at the base of the tree. You can think of the nabari as the foundation of the bonsai from which the rest of the design grows out of. It's there to give the tree a sense of balance and stability. If you don't get your nabari right, your tree can look really unstable to the eye, kind of like the Leaning Tower of Pisa, like it's almost about to topple over. And it won't matter how great your foliage pads are or how well distributed your branches are, if you don't get your nabari right, you can't tell the perfect story in your bonsai. So a good nabari spreads evenly around the trunk and creates a solid grounded look. And generally you want a nabari that's wide enough to balance the thickness of the trunk. Developing a good nabari takes time, and there's lots of techniques you can use to do that. And if you're interested in some of those, then check out the playlist I've got listed in the description, which includes some of the repottings I filmed for this channel. Now, this next term is one of the most important parts of your bonsai design, but you'd be surprised how many bonsai practitioners don't know the Japanese term for it. So what we're talking about next is the tachiagari. And what that describes is the part of the bonsai between the nabari and the first branch, roughly the lower first third of the bonsai tree. The tachiagari is really important in bonsai design because it creates the initial sense of movement and direction in the design of your tree. Now, not all bonsai styles have movement in the tachiagari. The formal upright and literati styles tend to have straight trunks. But in pretty much most other styles, you want to work on developing the tachiagari of your bonsai from a young age. It's an area of the tree that thickens fast. And so if you've got an older piece of material and you don't have the opportunity to wire in movement, there's other things you can do to create interest in the tachiagari, such as planting the tree at an angle so that the trunk doesn't come straight out of the pot, comes out at a bit of a diagonal. Now, our next term is one I'm guessing a few of you might not know. But before we jump into that, can I ask you something real quick? If this video is helping you to demystify some confusing bonsai terms, then please click the like button. It lets me know that this kind of content is actually useful for you, and it helps to support the channel so we can help more beginner bonsai enthusiasts on their journey. Now, the next term we're going to talk about is the sashieda. And sashieda refers to the first branch of the bonsai tree, or the main directional branch in the design. It serves to help set the overall flow of the design of the bonsai. So when you're styling, choose your sashieda carefully because the angle, direction, and ultimately the pad formation of that branch are going to influence the rest of the design of the tree. The next term we're going to talk about is part of the bonsai tree that is a challenge for bonsai practitioners with years of experience, let alone those who are new to the hobby. And what we're talking about with this term is the apex. And the apex is the uppermost part of the foliage of your tree. This part of the bonsai is critically important because it crowns the top of everything. And no matter how well styled the rest of the tree is, if you get the apex wrong, it can screw up everything else in the design. There's all sorts you can do when you're styling an apex. There's the shaping of it, there's the positioning of it, bringing it off to one side or another to change the design. And placement of the apex will play a really big role in the overall flow and direction of the bonsai. Sometimes you want the apex to lean away from the nabari to create more asymmetry in the design and more drama. Sometimes you want to bring it back over the base to add more stability to the design. And mastering the apex can be a really big tool in your bonsai belt. I'm thinking about making a video on styling apexes. If you're interested in that, let me know in the comments. Now, our next bonsai term is shohin, and shohin is a size classification for bonsai. It can vary from competition to competition, but generally it refers to a bonsai that's less than 20 centimeters tall. Here we have a piece of material that's not yet styled, but this will be a shohin Chinese juniper bonsai. Growing shohin bonsai comes with extra challenges. Because of their smaller pot, watering is more difficult and the soil can dry out more quickly, so they need more care and attention with water. And when you're designing, taking a small tree and making it look like a big tree is a lot harder. The smaller the tree is, the harder it is to scale it up to look like a big tree. But growing shohin is really fun, and it's a great way to challenge yourself and develop your bonsai skills. Especially if you're short on space in your garden and want to have more trees, then shohin can be a good way to go. And next I'm going to put two horticultural terms together, and that's node and internode. I brought in this Japanese maple, not because it's a bonsai, but because it illustrates this really well. This is actually a cheap supermarket maple that I bought for another video about 3 different ways you can turn a Japanese maple from a supermarket into a bonsai. So if you're interested in seeing that, then subscribe to the channel so you can be notified when it comes. Now, when we're talking about a node, we're generally talking about a place where buds grow on a branch, and that's where new shoots and leaves are going to grow out of. When we're talking about an internode, we're talking about the length of branch between 2 nodes. Now, we care about nodes and internodes in bonsai because the length of the internodes affects how compact the foliage of your bonsai is going to grow. Generally speaking, you want internodes to be as short as possible. The tighter your internode length is, the more branching you can create in a smaller area, and that helps you develop the scale of a large tree in miniature. So limiting internode length, that's a whole big topic on itself, but the things you can do are have your tree in a bonsai pot to constrict root growth, avoid over fertilizing it, and control the growth of your bonsai by pruning strong growth or partially or fully defoliating the tree to reduce some of its energy. Now, the next term I want to talk about is ramification. What that means is the fine detailed branching structure of a bonsai. It's basically how many times a branch splits into 2 smaller branches. Good ramification makes a tree look older, more refined, and more realistic as a miniature tree. To build ramification, you need to control growth in both the roots and the foliage. And if you're interested in particular for larch bonsai, I've made a whole video on how to improve ramification with them, so check out the link in the description. Now, our next term is shari, and what we're talking about there is deadwood. What shari refers to are areas of deadwood on the trunk of a bonsai tree. With the Amadori material, shari usually occurs due to drought, sun damage, animals, you name it. But with other garden grown material, you can imitate that same effect by peeling away layers of bark to get down to the hardwood underneath. To build upon that even more, you can take carving tools to your tree to create some character in the shari, but be careful doing that. Practice on some branches and material that you don't care about first, because if you're heavy-handed with your tools, you're not going to get those tool marks away ever again. So just take care there. Now, the next thing I want to talk about is akadama. Now, akadama is a special kind of volcanic clay that comes from Japan. It's used very heavily in bonsai soil mixes for its ability to hold on to nutrients, have great water and oxygen balance, and it has unique properties that enhance the ramification of roots growing in a bonsai pot. Now, there's a couple of downsides to using akadama. The first one is it can be quite difficult to source good quality akadama. If you have bad quality substrate, then it can mush down into powder really, really quickly, which is not going to be a good growing environment for your bonsai's roots. And the other thing is it can be really expensive, and if you're a hobbyist, that can be quite off-putting. So, I've been doing bonsai for a decade, and I still don't use akadama in all of my trees. I found that it doesn't make a big enough difference for the level of bonsai that I'm doing to justify the cost. So I have some on hand for specific types of repotting that I do, or for some of my special trees that I want to really give the best care. But otherwise, I substitute akadama for something like pine bark, which is really good at holding nutrients, really good for water balance as well, and is a hell of a lot cheaper than akadama. So that's our walkthrough of 10 bonsai terms. If you're ready to take the next step and make your own bonsai, then check out this video here.